Yes. All right. Hi, everybody. I am Heather Gustafson. I'm the state senator for SD 36. It is 9 cities, but my largest are Vadnais Heights, White Bear Lake, and Lino Lakes. Today, we passed an extremely important bill, a necessary bill in the state of Minnesota. It is a bill that establishes an office of Inspector General. It is an independent oversight authority that will safeguard our taxpayer dollars to make sure they are going for what they are intended to use and that they are being spent correctly. As you saw on the floor today, it received broad bipartisan support. It is a bill that was carefully crafted with all agencies, both Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate, and after long, long hours of carefully crafting it to make sure that we got it right. So we're proud of the work today. We have already made significant strides in fighting fraud in Minnesota, but today filled a gap that was desperately missing. We needed to be able to be more proactive. For years, we've been able to do quite a bit of fraud prevention work, but we were always still a little bit reactive. Establishing an independent Office of Inspector General means that we can now fight it in a proactive way, working with our agencies, working with the federal government, working with our state stakeholders to make sure that fraud is identified and stopped as quickly as possible. So I want to thank a lot of people who had a hand in this. I won't list all of them today, but we really, really appreciated this bipartisan effort, and we look forward to seeing this go through in the House.
Hello, everybody. I'm Senator Michael Kreun, Senate District 32. Blaine, Columbus, Ham Lake, and Lexington is my district. Just like to echo the comments that Senator Gustafson said. This is a really important piece of legislation. We all have been reading the headlines. All the Minnesotans have heard about the fraud that's happened here in Minnesota in the last few years, and it's really just unacceptable. At least $600 million. And there needed to be a large response from our state government to that issue. And, our focus was on the legislative response. And this establishing the Office of Inspector General is a key component to that legislative response to fraud. It's kind of like, why you run for office to begin with, to do the things that Minnesotans expect you to do in a bipartisan way. You don't let the partisanship here down at the Capitol get in the way of doing good work for the people of Minnesota. So that's what today was about. It was a long effort with a lot of people, talking with a lot of stakeholders, a lot of members. There'll be 10 engrossments now after the amendments on the Senate floor today, 11 committee stops. We co-presented the bill together at all but one of the committee stops, which is a unique thing here down at the Senate to show the seriousness of this issue with fraud. Minnesotans get up, like I said on the floor, Minnesotans get up every morning and go to work and pay their taxes, and they want to make sure that their tax dollars go to the things that it's supposed to go to. It's not a partisan issue. Minnesotans just simply won't stand for this kind of fraud, and we need to do something about it. This is a good bill that has been thoroughly vetted, and we look forward to its implementation and getting this passed into law, and so we can get fraud out of the headlines here in Minnesota. So with that, I guess, questions?
Yeah, questions?
Are you at a better place with DHS and other agencies? They've been concerned since some recent letters. What's your last feedback from them?
We met with them all day yesterday into the evening, and then again this morning as well. We are confident that even 2 committee stops ago, we felt confident that we would be able to address their concerns. But there were still things that we wanted to work out, so we put in quite a bit of time to make sure those were ready. And when we went to the floor, we are satisfied with where we're at. Senator Kreun had an excellent amendment that I think alleviated a lot of their concerns. If you have technical questions about that, you can speak to Senator Kreun. But I feel confident. We have had over 50 meetings with agencies on this, listening to their concerns, making changes at every committee stop. We take their feedback seriously, and we believe that we've alleviated all their concerns.
I'll just add to that. Yeah, many conversations, and I think we were as accommodating as we possibly could be. And that, with the interagency agreements and with the amendment on the floor today, And also when it comes to freezing funds and even beyond that, making sure that specific agencies like DHS that's responsible for Medicaid fraud, it's right in the bill that they're the primary investigative authority for Medicaid fraud. So we went out of our way, but where we couldn't go is to outright limit the jurisdiction of this new Office of Inspector General to investigate fraud and Medicaid fraud within the Department of Human Services. That's where a lot of the fraud has been coming from. And so that was the line we couldn't cross. And so it was about talking with everybody, alleviating all of those concerns up to that point, but making sure that this office will have the tools it needs to combat fraud. So it was a lot of conversations, a lot of listening, and with stakeholders, with agencies, and with other members. I think we came to a really good place, and to satisfy and address the concerns that they raised.
Governor Walz didn't introduce or pitch an OIG in his fraud package, and today he said that he's just not convinced among the experts that this is the most efficient way to get to what we're trying to do. Why do you think this is efficient to get at the issue of tackling fraud, and maybe what kind of discussions have you had with the governor about your bill?
Well, one, I'll say I did not know that quote was out there. I'm still looking at the quote that he said last week where he said he was eager to sign it into law. So we're also eager for that to happen. I would say that this is necessary. What the governor has done is admirable. Anybody who wants to join us in the fight against fraud in Minnesota, we welcome those ideas and we welcome those voices. But this needed to happen. What the Office of Inspector General is an independent oversight authority. It makes sure that every public or private entity that receives tax dollars, that those dollars are going exactly where they're supposed to go. And we don't really know that with the status quo that we have right now, which is why we have headlines, including a new one today. And so I think we needed to be able to be proactive. We needed to answer what the public was asking of us, and we needed to meet the moment. And that's what this bill did.
As far as the differences between the Senate and House versions of the bill go, specifically the executive versus legislative issue, how do you both feel about the path forward for this bill in the House?
Yeah, you're right. The key difference between the House version and the Senate version is their Office of Inspector General is set up in the legislative branch, where ours is in the executive branch. I will say that I think the Senate version is very appealing to a lot of people, even in the House, particularly after the amendment that went on the Senate floor today by Senator Latz, adding the law enforcement provision, because that's the type of amendment that can only happen if the Office of Inspector General is housed in the executive branch. We had a lot of discussions about that early on. Which branch do we want this in? And we had a lot of discussions with House members. One of the big reasons that we chose the executive branch is because there are more tools available in the executive branch. I think the counter to that some House members and why they drafted it the way they did, there could be more legislative oversight, obviously, if it's in the legislative department. But at the end of the day, if this is about combating fraud, we need to have the tools available to the Office of Inspector General to do that. So we made the decision to go with the executive branch, and I think that's ultimately the way it should go. When it gets presented to the governor's office. But we'll see how that goes. But I think that's the best way, and that's our strong preference, that the Senate version remains in that respect.
Would you be, I know initially with the bill, I mean, this was not even your first endorsement, like probably as introduced, there was a conversation about like what does staffing look like, and would existing IGs and other agencies like DHS or the Department of Education be folded into this? Can you just give a top line of how many people would be in this agency, and would any of those people be folded in?
So outside of the carve-outs that we have for DHS and DCYF, they stay where they're at. That's part of those federal regulations and what we want to be careful of and make sure that we're in compliance. And then the MDE, as far as that's concerned, those would fold over into the Office of Inspector General if this bill were to get across the finish line. The reason for that is just making it, again, another level of independence, still doing the work of fighting any potential fraud in education, but then also making sure that it's under that new office to have a little bit of separation outside of working within an agency.
So is there any additional FTEs beyond those that you would fold in and beyond the Inspector General himself or herself?
So, and if you remember, it was 30-something, I guess I don't want to be quoted, but it was FTEs, so is what about the size of the office would be. Unless you have an exact number, I don't remember, it was 30.
I don't remember the exact number of FTEs, but the fiscal note was relatively modest and 8.9 million, which quite honestly, this office is going to save a lot more taxpayer dollars than it's going to cost to get off the ground. So I think it's a great deal for Minnesotans in that respect.
Senator Hoffman.
Oh, thanks. Senator Hoffman sounded the alarm bell on the floor about potentially losing Center for Medicaid Service money. Could you just elaborate a little more on that, why you think that Senator Hoffman is incorrect here and why you think that federal Medicaid money is not under threat given the jurisdiction of this new IG?
I'll handle that. It is interesting how passionate he was. He didn't reach out to me at all to address those concerns. I had many conversations with DHS and with Senator Wickland, very respectful conversations, very productive conversations. We moved a lot to address those concerns. Ultimately, the question comes down to the federal government requires that Minnesota has this, the DHS, primarily responsible for conducting those investigations. But the key question here is there's, in my view, nothing in the law that requires that to be the exclusive agency that can do investigations relating to Medicaid. And I pressed back at every step of the way saying, where is this exclusivity coming from? Didn't get a clear answer. I offered to meet with DHS's lawyers and go over this. And ultimately that resulted in the compromise that you saw on the Senate floor, which does give the federal government the ability when it comes to certain sections within the bill to approve that before those sections become effective. So that's what you saw on the Senate floor. That was our compromise in working with DHS. And we think that should address those concerns. So if they are right about their concerns with the federal government, that amendment will take care of it. Those particular sections won't become effective, but the rest of the bill will, and the Office of Inspector will still have many great tools to start combating fraud. So that's kind of the overall conversation that was had, the accommodations that we made. Look, we want this bill to be workable. We want this bill to be legal, but it's also, we can't just say, well, off limits, because the only thing that DHS wanted that we were unwilling to do really was to make it so that the Office of Inspector General could not do any investigations on Medicaid fraud. Well, that's just unacceptable to Minnesotans. And quite frankly, I don't think the law requires that either. But we did put that provision in there just to be sure and just to make sure that we have a good, legal, workable bill.
Senator Gustafson, do you know if the concerns shared by Senator Hoffman were shared by the other members of your caucus that voted no on the bill?
I don't know. I think there were different reasons for different things, maybe amendments that had gone on. But again, I respect Senator Hoffman. I respect Senator Wickland. I know that they were the ones that spoke against it on the floor. I have a lot of respect for them. They know this area really well. But we know this bill really well. We know what this bill can do and won't do. We know that this bill is federally compliant. And we know that it addressed all of the things we needed it to do. We needed it to be an independent oversight authority. We needed it to be constitutional, and we needed to preserve federal funding. And we were able to do that. So I'm very confident that, unfortunately, we didn't get their support, but we had, broad bipartisan support. And I think that shows how many people are in agreement with us.
Does the Inspector General still have subpoena power in the latest engrossment? I know an earlier version did.
Yes.
Okay.
And how would this new office interact with the Office of Legislative Auditor?
So, one, that's a legislative branch office, and so as Senator Kreun had mentioned, we picked the executive office in order to sort of avoid some of those duplicative responsibilities. The Office of Legislative Auditor does fantastic work, and they're the gold standard of bipartisan oversight. However, again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, they're a little bit more on the reactive side instead of the proactive side. And so we would work in conjunction with them, not stepping on any of the work that they're doing, but as more of a partner and, a partner in this work.
I would just add to that, we did many conversations with the OLA as well to make sure that this new office wouldn't interfere with the work that she's doing, because that's not what we wanted to have happen. So she had a lot of input. We took her suggestions into account as well, which is one of why there's been so many engrossments. And so the legislative auditor is still going to be able to do the reports. There is some interaction between the two offices that are laid out in the statute that I think will benefit both offices without interfering with what the other one is doing.
Mechanisms are there within this bill that would prevent it from being a political arm of whatever governor is in office?
It's a great question. We spent a lot of time on this. So there is a bipartisan selection committee. It is 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans from each chamber. And they have to come together for a majority of the vote. So they'll have a public hearing where candidates are questioned and vetted. And then after that, they'll make a list of recommendations that they can hand off to the governor. He has the choice of either choosing from the recommendations or going his own way. However, in order for this person to be in office, the office to be fulfilled, there has to be a supermajority in the Senate. So it's sort of, asks that there is respect for that bipartisan process. And there's a long list in the bill, too, of all of the other things that we require to make sure that this isn't somebody who is like a former elected official or anybody that has a heavy partisan affiliation. All of that is listed in the bill as well, but we really want this to be as nonpartisan as possible, and we put a lot of effort into that.
If that process gets, say, gridlocked by, a Senate or a House that can't come to a supermajority on an appointment?
Well, if the governor chooses from somebody on the list, the chances of not getting a supermajority in the Senate would be small. If they don't get the supermajority vote, the process starts all over again.
If that were to happen, would the state just be without an inspector general until that situation? Obviously, it's an extreme example, but
yeah,
it could happen.
I think the most stress is the fact that we don't have a standing office or statewide inspector general right now. Should it go forward and they weren't able to come to a supermajority, there is one in place that can serve as an interim, but we don't have that right now. And so, that is the concern, but we don't think it's likely.
Yeah, and Minnesotans don't want to play they don't want us to play politics with this. And we, of course, look, if we could have, as a legislative body, chosen the office of Inspector General, and had that be the person, of course we would have liked to have done that, but there's constitutional problems with the legislative branch choosing an executive officer. And so it's about trade-offs, and that goes back to whether it should be in the legislative branch, whether it should be in the executive branch. We wanted the most tools available, recognizing that there could be some, hopefully not gamesmanship, but look, that's part of the process. I think Minnesotans would very much frown on that. If you have a good criteria set forth in the statute, you have a good open and transparent process involving an equal number of Republicans and Democrats to come up with a highly qualified list, I think it would behoove the governor to go with somebody on that list, and then you'd have probably near unanimous support in the Senate upon confirmation. I think that's the best way to go, and I think that is the way that Minnesotans would expect it to go as well.
Senator Kreun, did you have to convince some in your caucus that this isn't just creating more bureaucracy within state government?
Yeah, there's those discussions. Anytime that you create a new agency, some conservative people will say, well, you're just growing government. But I think it was pretty easy to convince them that this is going to save the taxpayer money. And it's really a rather modest startup cost to get it off the ground. And the savings and the opportunity to clamp down on fraud, I think it'll pay for itself many, many, many times over. So there was some questions about that, but it was a pretty easy sell.
Can you guys, I know you addressed it a little bit on the floor about working together, but surely Senator Gustafson, you didn't have to work with Senator Kreun on this, given the DFL majority. Why did you feel it important to work together on this?
Well, to me, it isn't anything new. I think, I come from a swing district, right? It's very purple. Working with people who don't always agree with you is common practice in my community. So that's not new to me. And I also knew that in order for this to get the support that we needed it to, not just in the Senate, but also in the House, this had to be bipartisan. I'd also say that it should be bipartisan. If you're going to establish a new office in our state, especially one on a topic that we all care about, it should be bipartisan work. And I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to, in a very genuine way, come together and work on this. There was no competitiveness over, language or media or anything like that. It was truly just us putting our heads down and getting to work. And I know that sounds trite, and people say that all the time, but this is maybe why this is one of my most favorite things I've done since I've been here. It taught me so much about how the government is working or sometimes not working, and it taught me about how there really are things that we can get done. And I think Minnesota, I know Senator Kreun mentioned this earlier, I think Minnesota should be proud. We hear so much about the division. This is a moment that we can all point to where everybody put egos aside and just did work, and we got it done. We got 60 votes in the Senate. That is a really difficult thing to do considering the makeup of our Senate. So I'm very proud of that as well. And I don't know if you heard my floor speech, but I have to throw this out here. We went to college together and didn't know it. So we were two Moorhead State kids, and I'm really happy that, you get a couple of new scrappy legislators in their first term, and they come together to bring the rest of the chamber along with us on something that's really important. So very proud of what we got done.
What makes you guys scrappy?
That's an easy one for me. That's the law background. But no, I think just to echo on what Senator Gustafson said, it's been a real great process. Like I said, this is why you do this. People, you get caught up in the partisanship around here. You all are around it. We're immersed in it. And it's unavoidable. It's a real thing. But when you go back home, that's not what regular people want you to be, and they don't want you to act that way. They want you to find common grounds. And sometimes that isn't possible, and I'll be the first to admit that. But when you have an opportunity to do it, then I think that's what you should do, because that's what your constituents actually elected you to do and what they want you to do. And so working with Senator Gustafson has been fantastic. I think it also helps that we don't have big egos either, which and you're not constantly jockeying for who gets credit on what. You're just focused on the work, doing the right thing, getting it to the next step, and then getting it to the next step and getting it across the line. So it's been a fantastic process, and I've really enjoyed it.
You mean politicians have egos? Sometimes.
I will just say quickly too, yeah, right? Oh, I can introduce you. No, I will just say too that this is something that Senator Dietzig encouraged me to do over a year ago, and I'm nowhere near as smart as Senator Dietzig was, but she always said, you're good at talking to people, so just go talk to people. And I think that's part of the scrappiness too. He's the nerdy lawyer, but I feel like I have some pretty decent relationships, and so that's been helpful. So thank you.